The sound that stopped Quinn Ellsworth from riding past that towering snowdrift on the Montana Trail wasn't the usual noise a man expected in the wilderness. It was the unmistakable sound of a woman sobbing like her heart had shattered into 1,000 pieces. He reined in his horse immediately, his breath forming white clouds in the frigid February air of 1885, and listened again to make certain his ears weren't playing tricks on him. There it was again, muffled but desperate, coming from somewhere near that massive wall of snow that had piled up against the rocky outcropping during last week's blizzard. Quinn was a practical man, 26 years old and weathered by years of cattle drives and ranch work, but he wasn't the kind to ignore someone in distress. He dismounted from his bay mare, his boots crunching in the snow, and called out into the white landscape. "Hello, anyone there?" The crying stopped abruptly, replaced by a tense silence that made the hair on the back of his neck stand up. Quinn moved closer to the snowdrift, his hand instinctively going to the rifle strapped to his saddle, though not to draw it, just for reassurance. "I heard you crying." "I am not here to hurt you. Are you injured?" A long pause followed, and then a voice, trembling and weak, emerged from somewhere within the snow. "Please go away." "Cannot do that, miss. You sound like you are in trouble." Quinn approached the drift more carefully now, realizing that there must be some kind of hollow or cave behind it. He began to carefully clear away snow with his gloved hands, working quickly despite the biting cold. "How long have you been out here?" "Since yesterday." The voice was clearer now, and Quinn could hear the exhaustion in it. "My horse threw me when a cougar spooked her. I found this cave, but then the snow came down and blocked most of the entrance. I have been trying to dig my way out, but I am so cold and tired." Quinn worked faster, his heart pounding with urgency. A full day and night in this weather could kill a person, even with shelter. Finally, he cleared enough snow to see into the small cave, and there she was, huddled against the back wall, her dark hair tangled around her face, her lips tinged blue with cold. Even in her bedraggled state, she was beautiful, with delicate features and eyes that reflected both fear and relief. "Let me help you out of there," Quinn said, extending his hand into the opening. The woman hesitated for just a moment before reaching out, and when her frozen fingers touched his, Quinn felt something shift in his chest, something he couldn't quite name. He pulled her carefully through the opening, supporting her weight as she stumbled on numb legs. "Thank you," she whispered, her teeth chattering so hard she could barely speak. "I thought I would die here." Quinn immediately shrugged off his heavy coat and wrapped it around her shoulders, despite the cold that immediately bit through his shirt. "We need to get you warm. My ranch is about 2 hours south of here. Can you ride?" She nodded, though her whole body was shaking. "I think so." "What is your name?" Quinn asked as he helped her toward his horse. "Olivia. Olivia Fairchild." She looked up at him with those striking eyes, and even through her suffering, he saw strength there. "I was traveling from Seligman to visit my aunt in Helena when my guide abandoned me 3 days ago. He took most of my money and left me with barely any supplies." Quinn felt anger surge through him at the thought of someone abandoning a woman in this wilderness. "That is a sorry excuse for a man. Here, let me help you up." He lifted her onto his horse with surprising gentleness for a man his size, then swung up behind her. Olivia sagged against his chest, and he wrapped one arm around her waist to keep her steady while holding the reins with the other. As they rode south through the snow-covered landscape, Quinn could feel her gradually relaxing against him, her shivering beginning to subside slightly from his body heat. "Stay awake now," he said quietly near her ear. "Talk to me. Tell me about Seligman." "It is a small town," Olivia murmured, clearly fighting exhaustion. "I lived there my whole life until last year. My father owned the general store, but he died of pneumonia last winter. My mother passed when I was young. I have been trying to make it on my own, but it has been difficult. My aunt wrote to me and said I could come live with her and help with her boarding house in Helena. I am sorry about your father, Quinn said, meaning it. He knew what it was like to lose family. His own parents had died in a fire when he was 18, leaving him and his younger brother to fend for themselves. What made you leave in February? That is dangerous traveling weather. I had no choice. There was a bitterness in her voice now. A man in town, Walter Grisham, decided he wanted to marry me. When I refused him repeatedly, he started making my life difficult. He owns half the businesses in Seligman, and he made sure I could not find work anywhere. He told me if I could not pay my rent, he would give me a place to stay, in his house as his wife. I sold everything I had left and hired a guide to take me north. Quinn felt his jaw tighten. He had met men like that before, men who thought money gave them the right to own people. You are safe now. I give you my word on that. They rode in silence for a while, and Quinn found himself very aware of the woman in his arms, the way she fit against him, the faint scent of lavender that clung to her hair despite everything she had been through. He had known her for less than an hour, but something about Olivia Fairchild had already worked its way under his skin. "What about you?" Olivia asked softly, her voice a bit stronger now. "Do you have family?" "Just my brother, Daniel. He is 21 and works the ranch with me. We have about 200 head of cattle and some horses. It is not much, but it is ours." Quinn paused, then added, "We have a housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, who will take good care of you. She is a widow from California who needed work, and she has been with us for 3 years now." "You are very kind," Olivia said, and Quinn felt her hand come up to rest on his arm where it wrapped around her waist. The gesture was small but intimate, and it made his heart beat faster. "Just doing what anyone decent would do," he replied, though he knew that wasn't entirely true. Plenty of men would have ridden on by, not wanting to get involved. Something had made him stop, some instinct that told him this woman was important. The ranch came into view as the afternoon sun began its descent toward the western mountains. It wasn't a grand place, just a sturdy log house with a barn and several outbuildings, but it was well maintained and sat in a beautiful valley surrounded by snow-capped peaks. Smoke rose from the chimney, a welcoming sight in the cold. As they approached, a young man emerged from the barn, his face breaking into a smile when he saw Quinn. "About time you got back. I was starting to worry." The smile faded when he noticed Olivia. "Who is this?" "Daniel, this is Miss Olivia Fairchild. I found her stranded in a snowdrift up on the northern trail. She has been out in the cold for over a day. Can you take care of my horse while I get her inside?" Daniel immediately nodded, his expression turning serious. "Of course. Miss Fairchild, welcome to the Ellsworth Ranch." Quinn dismounted first, then carefully helped Olivia down. Her legs nearly gave out, and he swept her up into his arms without thinking. She made a small sound of protest, but he ignored it, carrying her toward the house. "You can barely stand. Let me help." The front door opened before they reached it, and a small, efficient-looking woman with graying hair and sharp eyes appeared. Mrs. Chen took one look at Olivia and immediately switched into action. "Bring her to the guest room. I will heat water for a bath and make hot tea." The poor girl looks half frozen. Quinn carried Olivia through the modest but comfortable house to a small bedroom near the back. He set her gently on the bed, and Mrs. Chen shooed him out immediately. "Go on now. I will take care of her. You men always think you are so helpful, but what she needs now is privacy and warmth and proper care." Reluctantly, Quinn backed out of the room, but not before catching Olivia's eyes one more time. She smiled at him, a real smile despite her exhaustion, and mouthed the words, "Thank you." He nodded and closed the door, his heart doing strange things in his chest. Daniel found him in the main room a few minutes later, standing by the fireplace and staring into the flames. "So, you want to tell me the whole story?" Quinn recounted everything Olivia had told him, and Daniel's expression grew darker as he listened. A man who would abandon a woman in the wilderness like that deserves to be horsewhipped, and this Grisham fellow sounds like a real piece of work, too. "She cannot go back to Seligman," Quinn said firmly, "and with no money she cannot continue to Helena either." "So what are you thinking?" Daniel asked, though the knowing look in his eyes suggested he already had a good idea. "I am thinking we could use help around here. Mrs. Chen has been saying the house is too much for her to manage alone, especially with cooking for all of us and helping with the ranch accounts. Maybe Miss Fairchild would consider staying on, at least until spring when travel is safer." Daniel grinned. "And it has nothing to do with the way you looked at her just now, like she was the first sunrise after a long winter." "Do not start," Quinn warned, but he could not quite keep the smile off his face. "I just met her." "Some things you just know," Daniel said with a shrug. "Ma always said she knew she would marry Pa the first time she saw him. Maybe it runs in the family." Quinn did not reply to that, but he thought about it as he went about his evening chores. Could a person really know that fast? He had courted a few women over the years, but nothing had ever come of it. He had always felt like something was missing, some spark that would make him want to build a life with someone. But in that brief time holding Olivia, helping her, looking into her eyes, he had felt something shift inside him, like a compass needle finally finding true north. Mrs. Chen emerged from the guest room an hour later, looking satisfied. "She will be fine. Just exhaustion and cold, no frostbite, thank goodness. I got her into a hot bath and clean clothes, and now she is resting. She should sleep through the night, and by morning she will be much better." "Thank you, Mrs. Chen," Quinn said gratefully. "I do not know what we would do without you." The older woman waved a hand dismissively. "That girl has been through something terrible. You did a good thing today, Quinn. Your parents would be proud." She paused, then added with a slight smile, "She is very pretty, is she not?" Quinn felt his face heat up. "I had not really noticed." Mrs. Chen laughed outright at that. "Of course you had not. And I suppose that is why you stood outside her door for 5 minutes after I sent you away, looking like a lost puppy." Even Daniel chuckled at that, and Quinn threw up his hands in mock surrender. "Fine. Yes, she is pretty. But that does not change the fact that she needs help and we can provide it. That is all there is to it." "For now," Mrs. Chen said mysteriously, and went to finish preparing dinner. True to Mrs. Chen's prediction, Olivia slept through the entire night and most of the next morning. When she finally emerged from the guest room, looking much better though still pale, Quinn and Daniel were just coming in from the barn for the midday meal. She had dressed in a simple blue calico dress that Mrs. Chen must have provided, and her dark hair was pulled back in a neat braid. Quinn found he could not look away from her. "Miss Fairchild," he said, getting to his feet immediately. "How are you feeling?" "Much better, thanks to all of you," Olivia said, her voice stronger now. "I cannot thank you enough for your kindness. Mrs. Chen has been wonderful, and this house is so warm and welcoming." "Please, sit down," Quinn said, pulling out a chair for her at the table. "You must be hungry." Over the meal of beef stew and fresh bread, they talked more easily than Quinn would have expected. Olivia had a quick wit and a warm laugh that filled the house in a way it had not been filled since his mother died. She asked intelligent questions about the ranch and listened with genuine interest as Quinn and Daniel explained their operation. Mrs. Chen watched the whole interaction with obvious approval. After the meal, Quinn asked if he could speak with Olivia privately. They moved to the main room, and he gestured for her to sit in one of the chairs by the fire while he remained standing, suddenly nervous. "Miss Fairchild, I want to make you a proposition," he began, then winced at how that sounded. "A business proposition, I mean, a respectable one." Olivia's lips quirked in amusement. "I am listening." "You said you need work and a place to stay. We could use help here at the ranch. Mrs. Chen has been wanting an assistant for some time, someone to help with the house and the cooking and the accounts. The work would not be easy, but we would provide room and board and fair wages. You would have your own room, complete privacy and respect, and when spring comes, if you still want to go to Helena, we would help you get there safely with enough money to start fresh." Olivia was quiet for a long moment, her eyes studying his face. "Why are you doing this? You do not know me." Quinn sat down in the chair opposite her, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. "Because you need help and we can provide it. Because no one should be abandoned the way you were. And because—" He hesitated, then decided to be honest, "because I would like to know you better. There is something about you, Miss Fairchild, something that makes me want to see you smile and hear you laugh and know that you are safe and well. I know that probably sounds strange, given that we just met, but it is the truth." Color rose in Olivia's cheeks, and she looked down at her hands. "It does not sound strange. I felt something too, yesterday when you pulled me from that cave, like I had been waiting for someone, and suddenly there you were." She looked up at him again, and her eyes were bright with emotion. "I would be honored to accept your offer, Mr. Ellsworth. I promise I will work hard and earn my keep." "Quinn," he said softly, "please call me Quinn. Only if you call me Olivia." "Agreed." He stood and extended his hand, and when she placed hers in it, that same jolt of connection went through him. They shook hands formally, but neither of them let go right away, both seeming reluctant to break the contact. The days that followed fell into a comfortable pattern. Olivia proved to be everything Quinn had hoped for and more. She was an excellent cook, a hard worker, and she brought a warmth to the house that had been missing. She got along wonderfully with Mrs. Chen, the two women often laughing together in the kitchen as they prepared meals or worked on mending. Daniel took to her immediately, treating her like the sister he had never had. But it was with Quinn that Olivia seemed to truly bloom. They found excuses to be near each other, to talk about everything and nothing. Quinn taught her to ride his gentlest mare, patiently guiding her through the basics, even though she claimed to already know how. Olivia helped him with the ranch accounts in the evenings, her neat handwriting and quick mind with numbers proving invaluable. They sat together by the fire after dinner, sometimes talking, sometimes just enjoying the comfortable silence. 2 weeks after Olivia's arrival, Quinn found himself falling more deeply for her with each passing day. The way she hummed while she worked. The way she tilted her head when she was thinking. The way her whole face lit up when she smiled. He caught himself watching her constantly, memorizing every detail, and he knew he was in trouble. This was not just attraction. This was something much deeper and more dangerous. One evening, as they sat together going over the accounts, Olivia suddenly set down her pen and looked at him. "Quinn, can I ask you something personal?" "Of course," he said, though his heart rate picked up nervously. "Have you ever been in love?" The question caught him off guard, and he took a moment to consider his answer. "I thought I was once when I was younger, but looking back, it was nothing like what I imagined love should be. What about you?" Olivia shook her head. "No. There was a boy in school I thought I liked, but it was childish, not real. My father used to tell me that when I met the right person, I would know because everything would suddenly make sense, like finding a piece of myself I did not know was missing." She paused, her eyes meeting his. "I think I am beginning to understand what he meant." Quinn's breath caught in his throat. "Olivia, I know it has only been 2 weeks, she said quickly. I know it is too soon to feel this way, but I cannot help it, Quinn. When I am with you, I feel like I am exactly where I am supposed to be. When you look at me, I feel seen in a way I never have before, and I hope, that maybe you feel it too. Quinn reached across the table and took her hand in his thumb gently stroking across her knuckles. I do feel it. From the moment I heard you crying in that snowdrift, something in me recognized something in you. I know it sounds impossible, but I think I have been waiting for you my whole life, Olivia. I just did not know it until you were there. Tears gathered in Olivia's eyes, but they were happy tears. So what do we do now? Now, Quinn said, standing and pulling her gently to her feet. I think we stop pretending this is just about business or convenience and we admit what this really is. He reached up and cupped her face in his hands, his touch infinitely gentle. I am falling in love with you, Olivia Fairchild. Actually, I think I am already there. I know it is fast, and I know we should probably take more time, but I do not want to waste a single day not telling you how I feel. I love you too, Olivia whispered, her hands coming up to rest on his chest. I think I started loving you the moment you did not ride on by. Quinn lowered his head slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away, but Olivia rose on her toes to meet him. Their first kiss was gentle and sweet, a soft press of lips that nevertheless sent sparks through Quinn's entire body. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathless. Well, it is about time, Mrs. Chen's voice came from the doorway, making them both jump apart. The older woman was smiling broadly. I was wondering how long you two would dance around each other. Daniel owes me $5. I bet you would not make it 3 weeks before kissing. Olivia laughed, burying her face against Quinn's chest in embarrassment, and he wrapped his arms around her, grinning at Mrs. Chen. You bet on us. Of course we did. It was obvious from the first day. Mrs. Chen waved a hand at them. Do not stop on my account. It is good to see love in this house again. Over the following weeks, as winter slowly began to release its grip on Montana, Quinn and Olivia's relationship deepened and grew. They were careful to maintain propriety, aware that Olivia was living under his roof and that appearances mattered. But everyone on the ranch could see how perfect they were together. Quinn courted her properly, with walks in the snow, small gifts he carved from wood during the evenings, and long conversations about their dreams and hopes for the future. Olivia opened up more about her difficult year in Seligman after her father's death, about the loneliness and fear she had felt, and about how finding Quinn had restored her faith that good men still existed in the world. I used to think I was cursed, she told him one evening as they stood on the porch watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of gold and pink. Everything I loved was taken from me. My mother, then my father, then my home and my security. When that guide abandoned me, I thought that was it, that I was destined to die alone in the wilderness, forgotten by everyone. Quinn pulled her closer, wrapping his arms around her from behind. You are not cursed, and you will never be alone again. I promise you that, Olivia. She leaned back against him, her hands coming up to hold his arms. How did I get so lucky? What did I do to deserve you? You survived, Quinn said simply. You kept going when anyone else might have given up. You stayed strong and kind despite everything that happened to you. That is what you did to deserve happiness, Olivia. You fought for it. Spring arrived in earnest in late March, bringing with it warming temperatures and the first green shoots pushing through the melting snow. The ranch came alive with activity as calving season began, and Olivia proved herself invaluable, helping with everything from bottle-feeding orphaned calves to assisting Mrs. Chen in preparing meals for the extra hands they brought on for the busy season. One evening in early April, Quinn asked Olivia to take a walk with him after dinner. They walked down to a small creek that ran through the property, swollen now with snowmelt, and stopped under a large cottonwood tree that was just beginning to bud. "Olivia, I need to talk to you about something," Quinn said, his voice more serious than usual. Olivia felt a flutter of nervousness in her stomach. "What is it? When you first came here, I told you that when spring arrived, if you wanted to go to Helena, we would help you get there." Quinn took both of her hands in his. "Spring is here now, and I need to know what you want to do. I will not hold you to our arrangement if you want to move on. I will give you the wages we agreed upon and help you travel safely to your aunt's house. But before you decide, I need you to know something." "What?" Olivia asked, though her heart was already pounding because she thought she knew what he was about to say. Quinn reached into his pocket and pulled out a small ring, simple but beautiful, with a single small diamond set in gold. "This was my mother's ring. My father gave it to her when they married, and she wore it every day until she died. Before she passed, she made me promise that I would only give this ring to a woman I loved with my whole heart, a woman I could not imagine living without." Tears were already streaming down Olivia's face as Quinn slowly dropped to one knee in front of her. "Olivia Fairchild, I love you more than I knew it was possible to love another person. You have brought light and joy into my life in ways I never expected. I know we have not known each other long, but I also know that I want to spend the rest of my life with you. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep beside you every night. I want to build a family with you and grow old watching our children and grandchildren play in this valley. Will you marry me, Olivia? Will you stay here not as my employee or my guest, but as my wife?" "Yes," Olivia managed to say through her tears. "Yes, Quinn, I will marry you. I love you so much, and there is nowhere else I would rather be than here with you." Quinn stood and slipped the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her. Then he pulled her into his arms and kissed her deeply, pouring all of his love and hope and joy into that kiss. When they finally broke apart, both of them were laughing and crying at the same time. They walked back to the house hand in hand, and when they announced their engagement, there was celebration all around. Daniel picked Olivia up and spun her around, declaring that he had always wanted a sister. Mrs. Chen cried happy tears and immediately began planning the wedding. The ranch hands who had come to know Olivia over the past weeks raised their glasses in toast after toast to the happy couple. They decided to marry in June, wanting to give Olivia time to prepare and to allow the weather to be at its best for the celebration. Olivia wrote to her aunt in Helena to share the happy news, and received back a warm letter expressing joy at Olivia's good fortune and a promise to attend the wedding. The weeks leading up to the wedding were busy and happy ones. Olivia worked with Mrs. Chen to sew her wedding dress, a beautiful creation of cream-colored silk that had been purchased in town. The local minister was contacted, and plans were made for a simple ceremony at the ranch, followed by a celebration with all their friends and neighbors. Quinn found himself counting down the days with an impatience he had never experienced before. He wanted Olivia to be his wife in every sense of the word, wanted the right to call her his own, wanted to start building the life they had talked about during their long evening conversations. One afternoon, about 2 weeks before the wedding, Quinn was working in the barn when Daniel came running in, his face pale. "Quinn, you need to come to the house right now. There is someone here to see Olivia, and I do not like the look of him." Quinn's blood ran cold, and he immediately dropped the harness he had been mending and strode toward the house. Standing on the porch was a well-dressed man in his 40s, with cold eyes and a cruel mouth. Behind him were 2 rough-looking men who were clearly hired muscle. "Can I help you?" Quinn asked, his voice hard as he positioned himself between the strangers and the door to his house. The well-dressed man looked him up and down dismissively. "I am here for Olivia Fairchild. I was told she is staying here." "And who might you be?" Quinn asked, though he had a sinking feeling he already knew. "Walter Grisham. I own half of Seligman, and Olivia is my fiancée. I have come to take her home." "Miss Fairchild is not your fiancée," Quinn said coldly. "She is mine. We are to be married in 2 weeks." Grisham's face darkened with anger. "That is not possible. Olivia is mine. I have been courting her for months, and she agreed to marry me before she ran away." "That is a lie." Olivia's voice came from the doorway, and Quinn turned to see her standing there, her face white but her eyes blazing with fury. "I never agreed to marry you, Walter. I told you no at least a dozen times. You are the one who made it impossible for me to survive in Seligman, hoping to force me into accepting your proposal. Now, Olivia, you are being dramatic," Grisham said, his voice taking on a falsely soothing tone that made Quinn want to hit him. "You were confused and upset after your father's death, but I have been patient, and now it is time for you to come home and fulfill your obligations." "I have no obligations to you," Olivia said firmly, coming to stand beside Quinn. He immediately put his arm around her waist, both to comfort her and to make their relationship clear to Grisham. "I am exactly where I want to be with the man I love. You need to leave." Grisham's eyes narrowed as he looked at Quinn. "You think you can just steal another man's woman?" "I do not know how things work in Montana, but where I come from, that is a good way to end up dead." "Are you threatening me?" Quinn asked quietly, but there was steel in his voice. "I am stating facts. Olivia is coming back to Seligman with me one way or another." "The hell she is," Daniel said, appearing from the barn with a rifle cradled casually in his arms, not pointing it at anyone but making its presence known. At the same time, Mrs. Chen emerged from the house with a shotgun of her own, and several of the ranch hands who had heard the commotion began to gather. Quinn smiled grimly. "It seems you are outnumbered, Grisham. Olivia is not going anywhere with you. She is free to make her own choices, and she has chosen to stay here and marry me. Now I suggest you get back on your horses and ride out of here before this gets unpleasant." Grisham looked around at the assembled group, clearly calculating his odds. His 2 hired men looked nervous, their hands hovering near their guns but not drawing them. Finally, Grisham's face twisted into an ugly sneer. "This is not over. Olivia is mine by right. She owes me for all the years I waited for her, for all the patience I showed her." "I owe you nothing," Olivia said, her voice shaking but strong. "You are a bully and a coward, Walter Grisham, and I want nothing to do with you. Go back to Seligman and leave me alone." "You will regret this," Grisham said, pointing at her. "Both of you will." "I am not a man who takes rejection well." "Is that another threat?" Quinn took a step forward, his fists clenched. "Because I am getting real tired of your mouth. You can make all the threats you want, but it will not change anything. Olivia is staying here. If you or anyone you send comes back to this ranch, you will be met with force. Do you understand me?" For a long moment, the 2 men stared at each other, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Then Grisham turned abruptly and stalked toward his horse. "You have made an enemy today," he called over his shoulder. "That was a mistake you will both live to regret." They watched until Grisham and his men had ridden out of sight, and only then did Quinn allow himself to relax slightly. He turned to Olivia, who was trembling now that the confrontation was over, and pulled her into his arms. "It is all right," he murmured against her hair. "He is gone, and he will not hurt you, I promise." "He meant those threats," Olivia said, her voice muffled against his chest. "Walter is not a man who accepts defeat. He will do something, Quinn. I know he will." Then we will be ready, Quinn said firmly. Daniel, I want men posted around the property at night, just in case, and someone should ride into town and let the sheriff know what happened here today. Over the next 2 weeks, everyone on the ranch was on high alert. Quinn hired 2 extra men specifically to watch for trouble, and he made sure Olivia was never alone outside the house. The wedding preparations continued, but there was an undercurrent of tension that no one could quite shake. 3 days before the wedding, Quinn's worst fears were realized. He woke in the middle of the night to the smell of smoke. Heart pounding, he threw on his clothes and ran outside to find the barn engulfed in flames. The alarm was already being raised, and ranch hands were running from all directions with buckets. "The horses!" Quinn shouted, and several men immediately ran toward the barn. Quinn joined them, covering his nose and mouth with his bandana as he plunged into the smoke-filled building. The animals were terrified, screaming and kicking in their stalls. Working together, the men managed to get all the horses out safely, though Quinn sustained a burn on his arm in the process. They fought the fire for hours, and by the time the sun rose, the barn was a total loss. Exhausted and covered in soot, Quinn stood looking at the smoldering ruins with Daniel and Olivia beside him. "It was Grisham," Daniel said quietly. "It had to be." "Can you prove it?" Olivia asked, her voice anguished. "I am so sorry, Quinn. This is all my fault." "This is not your fault," Quinn said firmly, pulling her against his side despite his filthy state. "This is Grisham's fault, and he will pay for it." One of the ranch hands approached, holding something in his hand. "Found this near where the fire started, boss. Thought you should see it." It was a monogrammed handkerchief with the initials WG embroidered on it. Quinn's jaw tightened as he looked at it. "That is proof enough for me. Daniel, ride into town and get the sheriff out here. Show him this and tell him everything. I am going to clean up and check on the horses." The sheriff, a no-nonsense man named Tom Brennan, arrived within 2 hours and took the situation seriously. "I have had run-ins with Grisham before," he said. "Man thinks his money makes him above the law. But arson is a serious crime, and with this evidence I can at least bring him in for questioning. Will not be easy, though. He has connections." "I do not care who he knows," Quinn said coldly. "He burned down my barn and could have killed people and animals. I want him held accountable." Sheriff Brennan nodded. "I will do what I can. In the meantime, I suggest you keep your guard up. Men like Grisham do not stop with one attempt." The next 2 days were tense. Quinn increased security even more, and the men all took turns standing watch. Olivia barely slept, consumed with guilt and worry despite Quinn's repeated assurances that none of this was her fault. The evening before the wedding, Quinn found Olivia sitting alone on the porch, staring out at the mountains. He sat down beside her and took her hand. "You are thinking about calling off the wedding," he said quietly. Olivia did not deny it. "Maybe if I left, if I went away somewhere far from here, Grisham would leave you alone. You have lost your barn because of me. What if next time it is the house? What if someone gets hurt?" Quinn turned to face her fully, his hands cupping her face and forcing her to look at him. "Olivia Fairchild, you listen to me. I am not letting you go. Not tomorrow, not ever. What Grisham did was his choice, not yours. You are not responsible for the actions of a madman. And yes, I lost a barn, but barns can be rebuilt. What I cannot rebuild is my life without you in it. Do you understand me? But Quinn, no buts. Tomorrow you are going to put on that beautiful dress and you are going to marry me in front of our family and friends. And then we are going to build a life together and we are going to be happy, and Walter Grisham can go to hell for all I care." Quinn's voice was fierce, but his touch remained gentle. "I love you, Olivia. That is not going to change no matter what that man does." Tears spilled down Olivia's cheeks. I love you too, so much. Then trust me, trust us. We are stronger together than anything Grisham can throw at us." Olivia nodded and leaned forward to rest her forehead against his. "Okay, tomorrow I become your wife." "Tomorrow," Quinn agreed. "You become my wife and we start the rest of our lives." The next morning dawned clear and beautiful, with a bright June sun warming the valley. Despite the burned-out barn standing as an ugly reminder of Grisham's visit, there was an air of celebration on the ranch. Mrs. Chen had outdone herself decorating the yard with wildflowers, and tables had been set up for the feast that would follow the ceremony. Quinn stood under an arch of cottonwood branches, his heart pounding as he waited for his bride. Daniel stood beside him as his best man, looking proud in his Sunday clothes. The gathered crowd, which included neighboring ranchers and their families, the ranch hands, and several people from town, waited with anticipation. Then the door to the house opened, and Olivia emerged on Mrs. Chen's arm. Quinn's breath caught in his throat at the sight of her. The cream-colored dress made her skin glow, and her dark hair was piled on top of her head with small white flowers woven through it. But it was her smile, radiant and full of joy, that made Quinn feel like the luckiest man alive. As she walked toward him, Quinn thought about everything that had brought them to this moment. A crying woman hidden by a snowdrift, his decision not to ride on, 2 months of falling in love, of learning each other, of building something real and lasting. And now, this moment, where they would pledge their lives to each other. Olivia reached him and took his hands, and Quinn could not stop smiling as the minister began the ceremony. He barely heard the words, too focused on Olivia's face, on the love shining in her eyes, on the way her hands trembled slightly in his. "Do you, Quinn Ellsworth, take Olivia Fairchild to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part?" "I do," Quinn said, his voice strong and sure. "And do you, Olivia Fairchild, take Quinn Ellsworth to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part?" "I do," Olivia said, her voice clear despite the tears of joy on her face. "Then by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Quinn, you may kiss your bride." Quinn pulled Olivia into his arms and kissed her deeply, to the cheers and applause of everyone gathered. When they broke apart, both of them were laughing, and Quinn rested his forehead against hers. "Hello, Mrs. Ellsworth," he murmured. "Hello, Mr. Ellsworth," she replied, and they kissed again. The celebration that followed was joyous and heartfelt. There was music and dancing and more food than anyone could possibly eat. Olivia danced first with Quinn, then with Daniel, then with several of the ranch hands who wanted to congratulate her personally. Quinn watched her laugh and spin and glow with happiness, and he thought that even if Grisham burned down the entire ranch, it would be worth it for this moment. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Sheriff Brennan arrived on horseback, riding quickly into the yard. Quinn immediately tensed, but the sheriff was smiling. "Sorry to interrupt the celebration," Brennan called out, "but I thought you would want to know right away. We arrested Walter Grisham this morning. He was staying in a boarding house in town, and when we searched his room, we found evidence connecting him to the fire. He is also wanted for fraud in 2 other states. He will be going away for a long time." A cheer went up from the assembled crowd, and Quinn felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He found Olivia in the crowd and pulled her close, relief washing through him. "It is over," he said into her hair. "He cannot hurt us anymore." "Thank God," Olivia whispered, clinging to him. Now we can really start our life together." The party continued late into the night, and when it finally ended, and the last guests had departed or settled in for the night in various buildings around the ranch, Quinn led Olivia into the house and to the master bedroom that they would now share. The room was lit with candles, courtesy of Mrs. Chen, and the big bed was made up with fresh linens. Quinn closed the door behind them and turned to face his wife, suddenly nervous in a way he had not been all day. "Olivia," he began, but she stepped forward and put her fingers against his lips. "I love you," she said simply. "And I am not afraid. Are you?" Quinn smiled and shook his head. "Not anymore. Not with you." They came together slowly, tenderly, taking their time to learn each other in this new way. Quinn was gentle and patient, and Olivia was trusting and open, and when they finally joined together as husband and wife, it felt like the most natural thing in the world, like two pieces of a puzzle finally clicking into place. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the moonlight streaming through the window, Olivia's head on Quinn's chest, his arms wrapped securely around her. "You remember what I said that first day?" Olivia asked softly, "about feeling like everything suddenly made sense." "I remember," Quinn said, his hand stroking gently through her hair. "This is what I meant. Being here with you, it is like every hard thing I went through was leading me to this moment, like I had to lose everything to find what really mattered." Quinn kissed the top of her head. "I know exactly what you mean. I spent years thinking I was content with my life, but I was really just waiting for you to cry out in that snowdrift so I could find you." "Do you think it was fate?" Olivia asked. "I think it was a lot of things. Fate, maybe. Luck, certainly. But also choice. I chose not to ride on. You chose to accept my help. We both chose to take a chance on something that seemed impossible." Olivia tilted her head back to look at him. "I would choose you again and again, Quinn Ellsworth. In every lifetime, in every circumstance, I would choose you." "And I would choose you," Quinn said, lowering his head to kiss her. "Always." The months that followed were busy ones as Quinn and his crew worked to rebuild the barn, making it even bigger and better than before. Olivia settled fully into her role as the mistress of the ranch, working alongside Mrs. Chen to manage the household, and even helping with ranch tasks when her skills were needed. She proved to have a natural talent with the horses, especially the younger ones, and Quinn often found her in the corral working with a foal or gentle mare. As autumn arrived and the leaves turned gold and red across the valley, Olivia began to feel unwell in the mornings. It took her almost 2 weeks to realize what it meant, and when she finally did, she could barely contain her joy and excitement. She waited until dinner that evening when Quinn and Daniel were both at the table to make her announcement. "I have some news," she said, her eyes sparkling with barely suppressed excitement. Quinn immediately looked concerned. "What is it? Are you all right?" "I am wonderful," Olivia assured him. "Better than wonderful, actually. Quinn, we are going to have a baby." For a moment, Quinn just stared at her, the words not quite registering. Then his face split into the widest smile Olivia had ever seen, and he jumped up from his chair so fast it fell backward. He scooped her up in his arms and spun her around, laughing with pure joy. "A baby." "We are having a baby." He set her down carefully, suddenly concerned. "Wait, should I be spinning you? Is that bad for the baby?" Olivia laughed at his instant transformation into an overprotective father. "I am fine. The baby is fine. Everything is fine." Daniel was grinning from ear to ear. "I am going to be an uncle. This is wonderful. Mrs. Chen, did you hear? There is going to be a baby." Mrs. Chen emerged from the kitchen, smiling knowingly. "I heard. I have been suspecting for a week now, but I wanted to let Olivia tell you herself. Congratulations to you both." That night, Lying in bed with Olivia curled against him, Quinn rested his hand on her still flat stomach and marveled at the life growing there. "A baby," he said softly, almost reverently. "Our baby, part you, part me, all ours. Are you happy?" Olivia asked, though she could hear the happiness in his voice. "Happy does not even begin to cover it," Quinn said. "Olivia, a year ago I was alone. I had my brother and Mrs. Chen and the ranch, but I was alone. And now I have you and a baby on the way and a life that is richer and fuller than I ever imagined possible. You did that. You came into my life and transformed it completely." "We did it together," Olivia said, turning to face him. "And we are going to raise this baby together, and we are going to give them all the love we have. They are going to grow up knowing they are wanted and cherished and safe." "Always safe," Quinn agreed, his hand moving protectively over her stomach. "I promise you and our baby, you will always be safe with me." The winter that year was milder than the previous one, and Olivia bloomed with her pregnancy, growing rounder and more radiant as the months passed. Quinn was attentive and protective, almost comically so, until Olivia had to gently remind him that she was pregnant, not made of glass, and could still do most of her normal activities. In late March of 1886, just over a year after Quinn had first found Olivia in that snowdrift, she went into labor. It was a long and difficult process, but Olivia was strong and with Mrs. Chen attending her and Quinn holding her hand the entire time. She brought their son into the world just as the sun was rising over the mountains. Quinn held his son for the first time with tears streaming down his face, overwhelmed by the tiny perfect person in his arms. The baby had dark hair like his mother and what looked like it would be Quinn's blue eyes, and when he wrapped his tiny hand around Quinn's finger, Quinn felt his heart expand in a way he had not known was possible. "He is perfect," Quinn whispered, looking up at Olivia, who was exhausted but smiling from the bed. "You are perfect. Thank you, Olivia. Thank you for this gift." "What should we name him?" Olivia asked. They had discussed names for months, but suddenly Quinn knew exactly what felt right. "Matthew, after my father. Matthew Daniel Ellsworth." Olivia's eyes filled with happy tears. "That is perfect. Hello, Matthew. Welcome to your family." Daniel was beside himself with joy at becoming an uncle, and he took his role seriously, often volunteering to watch the baby so Quinn and Olivia could have a few moments alone together. Mrs. Chen doted on little Matthew, and the ranch hands all made a point of stopping by the house regularly to see how the baby was growing. As Matthew grew from an infant into a curious, active toddler, Quinn and Olivia's love deepened even further. They had weathered challenges together, from Grisham's threats to the fire to the normal struggles of ranch life, and each trial had only made them stronger. They still took time each evening after Matthew was asleep to sit together by the fire and talk, maintaining the connection that had been there from the beginning. 2 years after Matthew was born, Olivia gave birth to a daughter they named Sarah Amelia. Then, 2 years after that, another son they called Thomas Quinn. Their family grew and thrived, and the ranch prospered under Quinn's careful management and Olivia's skilled bookkeeping. Daniel eventually married a schoolteacher from town named Lucy, and they built a house on the other side of the property. Mrs. Chen, who had become more family than employee, lived out her days surrounded by the love and chaos of the growing Ellsworth clan, passing away peacefully in her sleep at the age of 75. Content in the knowledge that the lonely house she had first come to had been transformed into a home full of life and laughter. As the years passed and their children grew, Quinn and Olivia often found themselves reflecting on the unlikely way they had found each other. They told their children the story many times, how their mother had been trapped in a snowdrift, crying and afraid, and how their father had heard her and refused to ride on. The children loved the story, especially the romantic parts, and as they grew older, they came to understand what a precious and rare thing their parents had. One winter evening, many years after that fateful day when Quinn had first heard Olivia crying, they sat together on their porch watching their grandchildren play in the snow. Matthew was married now with 2 children of his own. Sarah was courting a nice young man from a neighboring ranch, and Thomas was away at school in Helena, but would be home for Christmas in a few weeks. Quinn looked over at Olivia, her hair now streaked with silver but her face still beautiful to him, and felt the same surge of love he had felt that first day. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if I had ridden on past that snowdrift?" Olivia reached over and took his hand, their fingers interlacing automatically after so many years. "I try not to. It is too frightening to think about, but I am grateful every day that you did not, that you heard me and you stopped and you chose to help." "Best decision I ever made," Quinn said, bringing her hand to his lips and kissing it gently. "Mine too," Olivia said, leaning her head on his shoulder. "Trusting you that day, staying here, building this life with you, all the best decisions." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the children play and the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in those same gorgeous colors they had seen on their wedding day all those years ago. "You remember what you said on our wedding night?" Olivia asked softly. "About how every hard thing I went through was leading me to that moment." "I remember," Quinn said. "I have been thinking about that a lot lately, especially now that we have grandchildren. Life is such a strange and wonderful thing, Quinn. All the pain and loss and struggle, it did lead me to you. But more than that, it taught me to recognize love when I found it. It taught me not to take happiness for granted. It made me strong enough to build this life with you." Quinn turned to look at her fully, his heart as full as it had been on that day he found her. "You know what I think? I think that crying in that snowdrift was the bravest thing you ever did. You could have stayed silent, frozen and alone, but you cried out. You asked for help even when you had no reason to believe anyone would come. That took courage, Olivia. That took hope. And you gave me a reason to keep hoping," Olivia said, her eyes shining. "You have been giving me reasons to hope and love and believe in good things for over 30 years now. You are my hero, Quinn Ellsworth. You always have been." "And you are mine," Quinn said, pulling her close and kissing her softly. "My love, my partner, my everything." They stayed on the porch until the children were called inside for dinner, and even then they lingered a moment longer, neither quite ready to break the spell of the evening. Finally, Quinn stood and helped Olivia to her feet, and they walked into their home hand in hand, surrounded by the warmth and light and love that filled every corner. That night, lying in bed with Olivia in his arms as he had every night for over 30 years, Quinn thought about how one decision, one moment of choosing not to ride on, had changed everything. He thought about all the days and years that had followed, the joys and sorrows, the triumphs and struggles, all the moments that had woven together to create the rich tapestry of their life. "Thank you," he whispered into the darkness. "For what?" Olivia murmured sleepily. "For crying loud enough for me to hear," Quinn said. "For trusting me, for loving me, for every day we have had together." Olivia turned in his arms and kissed him gently. "Thank you for not riding on. Thank you for seeing me, for choosing me, for building this beautiful life with me." "I love you, Quinn. Today, tomorrow, and forever." "Forever," Quinn agreed, and held her close as they drifted off to sleep, grateful beyond measure for a snowdrift that hid a crying woman, and for the choice that had changed both their lives forever. The years continued to pass gently for Quinn and Olivia Ellsworth. Their love, which had begun in such dramatic circumstances, settled into the deep, abiding affection of two people who knew each other completely and loved each other anyway. They celebrated anniversaries and birthdays, welcomed more grandchildren, and eventually great-grandchildren, all while maintaining the ranch that had been their home for so long. When Quinn was in his late 70s, he finally decided it was time to turn over the majority of the ranch operations to Matthew and Thomas, who had returned from Helena to help run the family business. He and Olivia spent their days in quieter pursuits, tending a garden, reading together, and taking slow walks around the property they both loved so much. One spring morning, very much like the one on which their son Matthew had been born, Quinn and Olivia sat on their porch watching the sunrise paint the mountains gold. Quinn's health had been declining slowly, and they both knew their time together was growing shorter, but there was no fear between them, only gratitude for the life they had shared. "You have any regrets?" Quinn asked, his voice still strong despite his frail body. Olivia thought for a long moment, then shook her head. "Not a single one. Every choice I made, every path I took led me to you and to this life. How could I regret any of that?" She paused, then asked, "What about you?" "My only regret," Quinn said slowly, "is that I will not have more time with you. But even that is not really a regret because the time we did have was so full and rich that I cannot complain. We had a good life, Olivia. A really good life." "The best life," Olivia agreed, tears sliding down her weathered cheeks. "And when your time comes, whenever that is, you will leave knowing you were loved completely and that your life mattered enormously. Not just to me, but to our children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, to this land and this ranch, to everyone whose life you touched." Quinn reached over and took her hand, marveling as he always did at how perfectly it fit in his. "Promise me something. Anything," Olivia said. "Promise me you will keep living, keep finding joy, keep being the amazing woman you have always been. Do not let grief consume you. I want you to laugh and love and enjoy every moment you have left, because that is what would make me happiest." "I promise," Olivia whispered, though they both knew how hard that promise would be to keep. "But you have to promise me something too." "What is that?" "Promise me that wherever you go, whatever comes next, you will wait for me, because I am not ready to say goodbye forever. This is just goodbye for now." "I promise," Quinn said firmly. "I will wait for you, and when you come I will be there, and we will have forever together." They sat together as the sun rose higher and the family began to wake and move about, preparing for another day. And though neither of them knew it then, they would have 3 more precious years together before Quinn passed away peacefully in his sleep one quiet October night, Olivia holding his hand as she had held it for more than 50 years. At his funeral, Olivia stood strong and proud, surrounded by the family they had built together, and told the story one more time of a snowdrift that hit a crying woman and the passing cowboy who heard her and refused to ride on. She told it with love and with gratitude, and everyone listening understood that they were hearing about something rare and precious, a love that transcended circumstance and hardship, a love that had built something lasting and good. Olivia lived 7 more years after Quinn's passing, years she filled with her children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, with tending her garden and maintaining the home she and Quinn had built. She never stopped missing him, but she kept her promise to keep finding joy, and those who knew her said that sometimes, when she thought no one was watching, they would see her smiling at something only she could see, as if Quinn was right there beside her. When Olivia finally passed away peacefully at the age of 89, surrounded by family and love. She was buried next to Quinn on a hill overlooking the valley they both loved. The headstone was simple but beautiful, bearing both their names and the dates of their two short lives, and below that, an inscription that Matthew had chosen. He heard her crying and refused to ride on. She trusted him and chose to stay. Together, they built a love that will last forever. And in the hearts of their descendants, in the stories passed down through generations, in the very land and buildings of the ranch that still bore the Ellsworth name, that love did last forever. A testament to the power of choosing love, choosing hope, choosing to stop and help a crying woman hidden by a snowdrift on a cold Montana day in 1885. The Ellsworth Ranch continued to prosper through the generations, each new caretaker adding their own chapter to the family story, but never forgetting the foundation that Quinn and Olivia had laid. The house was expanded and updated, but the bedroom where they had slept for so many years was left largely unchanged, preserved as a reminder of where it all began. Every year on the anniversary of Quinn and Olivia's first meeting, the family gathered at the ranch for a celebration. The children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren would listen to the story once again, never tiring of hearing how their family began with one man's decision not to ride past a woman in need, and one woman's courage to cry out for help when all seemed lost. And sometimes, on cold winter nights when the snow piled high and the wind howled through the valley, people swore they could see two figures walking hand in hand through the drifts, a man and a woman who had found each other against all odds and who loved each other so deeply that not even death could truly part them. Whether it was truth or wishful thinking, no one could say for certain, but it comforted the family to think that Quinn and Olivia were still together somehow, still watching over the land and the people they had loved so well. The story of Snowdrift, as the family affectionately called it, became more than just a family legend. It became a reminder that sometimes the most important moments in life come from choosing kindness over convenience, from refusing to turn away from someone in need, from being brave enough to ask for help and wise enough to accept it when it is offered. It became a reminder that love can bloom in the most unlikely places, in the middle of a frozen wilderness, between two strangers who were willing to take a chance on each other. And so the years turned into decades, and the decades turned into a century, and still the story was told and retold, passed down through the generations like the most precious heirloom. Because at its heart, it was not just a story about Quinn and Olivia. It was a story about hope and courage and love, about the choices we make, and the ripples those choices create through time. It was a story about a snowdrift that hit a crying woman, a passing cowboy who heard her and refused to ride on, and the extraordinary life they built together from that single moment of connection. It was a story that reminded everyone who heard it that sometimes the best things in life come from the most unexpected places, and that true love, when it is found, is worth holding on to with everything you have. And in the end, that was the greatest legacy Quinn and Olivia Ellsworth left behind. Not just the ranch or the family or the material things, but the story of their love, a love that began in crisis and grew through trust and bloomed into something beautiful and lasting. A love that inspired generations to believe in the possibility of finding their own snowdrift moment, their own chance to choose love over fear, connection over isolation, hope over despair. The sun continued to rise over the Montana mountains, painting them in gold and pink and purple, just as it had on the day Quinn and Olivia married, just as it had on countless mornings when they sat together watching nature's daily miracle. And somewhere in that sunrise, in the beauty and the promise of a new day, the spirit of their love lived on, eternal and unchanging, a light that would never be extinguished, a story that would never truly end, because the best stories, the truest stories, the stories about real love, those stories never really end at all. They just keep going, passed from heart to heart, inspiring new love, new hope, new courage to stop when we hear someone crying, to refuse to ride on when we know we could help, to choose connection and compassion and love, always love, in a world that sometimes feels too cold and hard and indifferent. Quinn and Olivia's story was a reminder that the world is not always cold, that there are still good people who will stop to help, that love still exists and flourishes and transforms lives in the most miraculous ways. And that reminder, that hope, that faith in the goodness of humanity and the power of love, that was the true ending to their story. An ending that was really just a new beginning for everyone who heard it and took it into their hearts and let it change them. Just as Quinn and Olivia had been changed by that fateful meeting in the winter wilderness so many years ago.